Welcome, everyone, to our ongoing class on the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 universal divine laws. We're right now in the 8th class of this specific series. We're studying the S'dei Chemed, which is a halakhic encyclopedia, Jewish law. And we're in the standard print, volume 8, page 3216. On the bottom of the left-hand column, on page 3216, beginning of the last paragraph on the page, which begins, for those that are able to follow and are following inside, with the big word, ubashoyel. We're in the middle of the topic discussion of the concept of nullification, if it applies with regards to Bnei Noach. If something is a minority, can it get mixed into the majority, and then we count it as if it's not there? In Jewish law, for the Jewish people, we have a concept called Bittul, nullification. If you don't know something is forbidden, and then somehow got mixed into a bunch of other stuff, and the majority is permitted, so oftentimes, depending on the details and on the situation, we will say that since there's no way to really find out and to know which is forbidden, which is permitted, as long as the majority is permitted, then the forbidden is to be ignored, it's non-existent, it's not there. Question is, do we say that with regards to Bnei Noach or not? And of course, we have to bring proofs and see what do we do. So right now, we're at the point of Ubashoyel Umeishiv. So again, page 3216, bottom of the left-hand column. Ubashoyel Umeishiv, Madura Chamisha, Siman Yud, Dibramas Kalvini Anoida B'Yuda Chodosh, Chidesh. Kasav Gam Kein B'Shem Pri Megadim, V'Noida B'Yehuda. All right, in a particular halachic work, in a Jewish work called Shoyel Umeishiv, and he tells us exactly where it is and which volume. He brings down in the name of two of the most prominent halachic authorities in Jewish law of the past couple hundred years. One of them is the famous commentary on the Code of Jewish Law, known as the Pri Megadim, and the other one is a famous responsa known as the Noida B'Yehuda. They both say, that when it comes to Bnei Noach, to the non-Jew, we do not go after the majority. And after he brought down that these two opinions say that we don't go after the majority, he wanted to bring a proof to the contrary. The proof is as follows. When it comes to the 7 Noachide commandments, although for the most part they are part of, and every one of those 7, for the most part, are part of the 613 for the Jewish people. As we've mentioned a number of times in previous classes, way back, before this particular series, and I'll just mention it again, contrary to what many people mistakenly think, that the universal laws for all of mankind are the 10 commandments. That's absolutely not true. Not that they don't overlap, and not that some of the 10 don't apply to the Bnei Noach. But just to point it out and to prove to you how it can't be, is one of the 10 commandments, as you all probably know, is keeping Shabbos, keeping the Sabbath. And when it comes to Bnei Noach, it is forbidden for the Bnei Noach to keep the Sabbath. It's actually a capital offense for them to keep the Sabbath. So that just shows you that the 10 commandments are not legally speaking, that's not the way to say, oh yeah, I know what God wants of me. I'm not Jewish and I'm supposed to keep the 10 commandments. Wrong. You have to keep the 7 Noahide commandments if you're not Jewish. Now, if you go down the list of the 7, one by one, they basically apply to the Jew as well. But there are differences. And let's discuss right now the one he's bringing in. One of them is manslaughter, murder. That's one of the 7 Noahide commandments. Killing, taking another human life is forbidden. That includes suicide. That includes manslaughter. Now, for the Jew, one of the 10 commandments is the prohibition of murder. But there's a difference. What about abortion? We've discussed this, not in this series of the S'dei Chemed, but in some previous classes, we've discussed it at great length. Again, every case, when it comes to practical application, has to be judged on its own merits. I'm speaking almost theoretically, I'm speaking in general terms. Okay, there are exceptions, and you have to know all the details. But in general, abortion is categorically forbidden. It's a sin. Are there ever any cases where abortion is permitted? Absolutely. But as a rule, abortion is forbidden. For anybody, Jew or non-Jew. Abortion, and I'm not getting into the details, at what stage of the pregnancy. Abortion is taking away a human life. Now, abortion for a Jew is forbidden. Abortion for a non-Jew is forbidden. The difference is, if the Jew aborts that pregnancy, if a Jewish mother carrying this child chooses to murder the fetus, it's a big sin. It is not a capital offense. She committed a sin. It is not a capital offense, and she is not put to death for that crime. However, if a non-Jewish woman, one of the Bnei Noach, in the exact same case, chooses to abort the fetus, that is a capital offense, and whoever did it is to be put to death when we are able to that, of course. That's again theoretical, because we don't have the power to do that now. So from the fact that we find this difference, that a ben Noach is killed for an unborn fetus, and a Jew is exempt, because of Haram, the Parshas Mishpatim, al pasuk ki notzu anoshim v'nogfu v'chuli. Now, what's the difference? Why is the Jew exempt from the death penalty if we consider it by the Torah to be murder? Why the difference? So one of the commentators in the book of Exodus, where there is the following scenario, in the portion of Mishpatim, there's the following case. Two Jewish men, are having a quarrel. And they're getting physically aggressive with each other. And accidentally, they hit a woman who was there, and she was pregnant, and she lost the child. they are exempt from the death penalty. Even if it wasn't an accident. Even if someone willingly and knowingly attacks the pregnant woman and she loses that child, that person is not put to death. There's other punishments. It's a financial thing. But as far as being put to death for murder, they are exempt. Why? So this commentator explains, Shetam haptur hu dechayshin and shema neifalhu. The reason why it's exempt is because we are concerned that maybe that unborn fetus was a miscarriage. Maybe that child would have never been born as a live child. Not every pregnancy goes full term and has a live birth. After Roiv Ubrim Yichlu Chodsheyim, even though most pregnancies do. Most pregnancies go to full term and have live birth, but not all. Mikol Mokim Hevi Hasras Safek. Therefore, I'm getting a little technical here. To remind you, we've discussed this before. By Jewish law, in order for the Jew to be liable for whatever the punishment is, whether it's the 39 lashes or whether it's one of the death penalties, there must be a proper warning and 2 witnesses, a lot of details. And the person has to respond to the warning. But there has to be a warning. If a Jew is about to commit a sin, whatever it may be, in order for him to receive the punishment by the court, we're not talking about between him and God. God knows the truth, knows whether it was an accident or on purpose, and we're talking about for the court to administer the punishment. It has to be with a warning. So whatever it may be, if someone was about to commit idolatry, we say maybe it was an accident. Maybe the guy forgot that he's not allowed to pray to a statue. Maybe he forgot that he's not allowed to worship the sun. There has to be a warning. We have to tell him right beforehand, do you know what you're about to do is forbidden because that is idolatry? For that matter, if someone is about to commit adultery, there has to be the warning. Maybe he forgot that he's not allowed to have marital relations with someone else's wife. Maybe he forgot that she's married. Maybe he forgot that it's his own sister or his own mother. Whatever. There has to be a warning. If someone's about to kill someone else, they're holding their weapon and they're about to commit murder, they have to have the warning. Person's about to desecrate the Shabbos, there has to be the warning. Any sin, there has to be a warning. Now the warning has to be a definite warning. It can't be vague. There's no such thing as telling a person, you know what you're about to do might be a sin. That's not an acceptable warning by Jewish law. We're very, very specific. Very strict on that. Can't tell the guy, you know, it looks like you're about to kill him, and that might be forbidden. And then if the guy responds and says, I don't care, and he shoots the person to death. That person in the Jewish court would not be put to death because the warning was insufficient. You can't say in a vague, uncertain way. Okay, now having said that, getting back to the case of someone is about to seriously injure an obviously pregnant woman. She's very pregnant, and I don't want to get too graphic, but he's about to take a very heavy weapon, and he's about to obviously terminate the pregnancy. Now, what kind of a warning can he be given? That you're not allowed to kill. He may not be killing because there is a chance that the pregnancy will not go full term and or it won't be a live birth, which means that by definition, such a warning has to be a doubt. It's a maybe. You're warning him that you might be killing someone. there's a chance that the fetus is no longer alive. There's a chance that the fetus is inside the mother and it's a miscarriage. That it'll be a stillborn. That's possible. And therefore, by a Jew, that's not a good warning. It's not an absolute warning. Even though that's a minority of cases. In most cases, thank God, it's full term, and it is not a stillborn, and it is a live birth. And yet, by a non-Jew, what do we say? That if the non-Jew killed the fetus, whether it was abortion or this case that I just described, there is the death penalty. According to this, Binachri, when it comes to the non-Jew, the Chayav, that he is liable. The person is getting the death penalty. That's because we go by the majority of births. That the birth will be a live birth. And a ben noyach is killed without a proper warning. Unlike the Jew that needs to have this crazy warning, it has to be like very specific, and it's got to be that the Jew responds and says, I don't care, or I know, or something to that effect, and he's got to do it within roughly 2 seconds. That's crazy. By the Bnei Noyach, we're normal. And therefore, even if there isn't a warning, if someone committed a crime, if they transgressed one of the 7 mitzvahs, it is a capital offense. Lachin chayav. Therefore, they're obligated because they don't need such a warning. You don't have to tell the person that, what you're about to do, the abortion, that could be murder. No, it's understood. So from here we see that by Bnei Noyach, we do go by the majority. Majority of births are live people. But if you're going to say that by Bnei Noach we do not go by the majority, then it has to be 100%. Akate kashe. So now it's difficult. How do we kill the person that killed the unborn fetus? Ella vadai. Rather, we must say with certainty, the gambe ben noyach hazlina basaruba. That by ben noyach, just like by a Jew, we do go by the majority. Again, don't get confused. The only reason by the Jew that he wouldn't get killed is because of the warning, that the warning can't be an absolute one. But put that aside, if you don't need a warning, well, then we go by the majority, and the majority is live births. So since the Ben Noyach does not need such a warning, therefore, we go by the majority. Which means that the Jew would also really get killed for aborting the fetus. The only reason you can't kill him is because you couldn't give him a proper warning. So from here we see that Bnei Noyach do legally follow majority. Ve'ein loymar, and we don't say de lo'olam, top of the next page. Loy azlinan basa ruba. We don't say that really we don't go by the majority. Rak de ben noyach nerag af besofek. And you know why you kill the ben noyach? Because even for a doubt you would kill him. Don't say that. This is not so. Why not? How do I know that we're not so strict with the Bnei Noyach? And really, we don't go by the majority. But you still kill them even for a doubt. An animal is also not put to death for a doubt. If there's a doubt whether an animal killed a human being or not, we don't kill that animal. Now, the life of a non-Jew is no less than the life of an animal. So if an animal is not put to death, if we're not sure if the animal actually killed a person, then of course the human being, the Ben Noach, is not put to death. So it's not because of a doubt. In other words, we do go by the majority, and we establish that the majority is considered definite. Now, in the parentheses, Omar HaMechaber Kivno Daitoi Ho'elyoinu L'Divrei Rabbeinu Mishnah L'Melech. So he says, actually, this which he said over here, he is on target with the opinion of one of the main commentators on the Rambam on Maimonides, known as the Mishnah L'Melech. Ba'asir Milchas Melachim, Din Ches, in the 10th chapter of the Laws of Kings, where he deals with the laws of Bnei Noach, law number 8. The Yoiser Mefurish Bidvarav Sham Din Zayin, and it's even more explicit over there in law number 7. But the Ramaskel Ach Masha Yesh Listapik, in the Mishnah L'Melech over there. Shekosav, that the Mishnah L'Melech wrote, Betam Shein Ben Noach Mibnei Keturah Neherag Im Loi Mol. Okay, there the discussion is circumcision. Most non-Jews do not get circumcised. However, there are certain descendants of Abraham, who had, besides his wife Sarah, who gave birth to Isaac, he also had a wife Keturah. So the descendants of Keturah, they are to be circumcised because God told Abraham that all of your male descendants are to be circumcised. Yet, there's no death penalty for the descendants of Keturah if they didn't get circumcised. Why? Mishum delachar shenisarvu havu safek. Because once all the nations of the world got mixed, going back to Sancheriv, the king of Ashur, where he successfully, literally mixed up the world. He transplanted nation from here to there, and after he did that, none of the original nations after the Great Flood, when the world was settled, and you have the original Sfarad, Spain, the original Ashkenaz, Germany, and the original Mitzrayim, Egypt, and the original Edom, etc., 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 that was so from the Great Flood until Sancheriv. He then transported people from country to country to country, and he had them all mixed, and therefore, from then on, every human being is not known of his true lineage, and just because he spent many generations in a particular country or he's not doesn't really have that nationality in a certain way, and therefore every human being is in a state of doubt. So if you see someone who is considered from the descendants of Keturah, he may not really be from the descendants of Keturah. That's the reason. So if you don't kill an animal because you're in doubt, well then surely you don't kill a human being, a ben noach. In other words, if an ox killed someone, then that ox is to be stoned to death. All right, that's what it says in Exodus, in Mishpatim. What happens if the ox got mixed in with 100 other oxen? I can't find which one it was. What do? Kill them all? Just take one of them randomly and say, well, let's just consider this as the one to kill him? No, you kill none. Because you don't know for sure. And every ox in that case is a doubt. Maybe this is the ox that needs to be killed, maybe not. Well, then don't kill him. So how much more is when you're talking about a person, a human being? So you surely don't kill a person in a case of a doubt. Vishuv dachazeh. But then he rejected this. Shari Rambam Perek Tesmi Melachim Al Chazayin Kasav, because Maimonides in chapter 9 of the Laws of Kings Law number 7, he writes, the Ben Noach hahoirik treifa, neherag. What happens if a Ben Noach, a non-Jew, killed a person who is terminally ill? He's considered a treifa. Okay, a treifa is a term that we use, generally speaking, regarding animals, but it could apply to people. There are different laws of internal ailments that if an animal, or for that matter a person has, they're guaranteed that they will not be able to live for more than 12 months from the time that they have that. Whether it's an issue in the lung or in the heart, any of the fatal injuries or whatever it may be. So, let's say for laws of kashrus for a Jew, after you slaughter a kosher animal, you slaughter a sheep, a goat, an ox, whatever, and it was a kosher animal and the slaughtering was done properly, that's not the end of the story. It's not yet edible for the Jew. Part of what you need to do now is make an internal checking of that animal of certain organs, such as the lungs. And if you find, for example, that there's a hole in the lung, after this animal, which seemed to be healthy, and it seemed to be grazing and doing fine, after we slaughtered it, now they went deep down into this dead animal. They find a hole in the lung. That animal is not kosher for a Jew to eat. It's called treifa. Okay? Now what happens if there's a person that is terminally ill and that the doctors say that this person is a treifa? He is definitely, short of a miracle, he will not be able to live more than whatever amount of time, because this is what he's got. Okay, so what happens if a Ben Noach kills such a person? So he didn't really kill a regular, the person's still living, but he's a treifa. So the Rambam rules that if a Ben Noach kills a treifa, it is a capital offense, and he is put to death for that. Even though we don't find a source for such a ruling. We don't know where is the Rambam getting that from. Mikol Mokim, nonetheless, Nemon Aleinu Rabbeinu. Maimonides is a good enough source. We trust him. V'im kein, if so, Loigora Nefel, Me'ilu Hayotreifa. Therefore, a miscarriage is no worse than this treifa case. Bevadai. Now, the person who's a treifa is surely a treifa. Legally speaking, we're guaranteed that he is not going to live long. And yet, for killing him, since he's still alive, that's a death penalty. Which basically means in practical terms, and again, I have to make this very clear. I am speaking almost theoretically. I mean this as a general statement, and every case has to be judged on its own merits. A competent rabbi who's of the authority, not anybody, who's able to give a ruling, needs to be contacted for Bnei Noach as well to tell them what the rule is in this case. But in general terms, pulling the plug is murder. Even if they say, but the person for sure will not make it. The person is guaranteed. All the doctors are guaranteeing the person is going to die within so many hours. There's no way. 72 hours, there's no chance this person is going to be still alive. So what? Right now, they are alive. You cannot shorten their life by a second. That's murder. Now, if that's the case there, where the person surely is not going to survive, and yet it's murder, and the Ben Noach is put to death for that, well, how much more so the unborn fetus, where the chances are that it will be a healthy live birth, by the person who's about to die, there are no chances. The person's going to for sure die. And yet that's murder. Here, by the unborn fetus, the chances are that it's a live fetus and it will be a live birth. And by the treifa, by the person who's surely going to die, the benoich is put to death for killing him. After sham bevadai lo yichye al pi haroiv, even though there surely the person won't live based on the majority. Again, the fact that you're going to find certain cases where all the doctors were ready to swear and put their license on the line, and they said this man is going to die within 72 hours. And then guess what? The guy got healthy, and he got up, and he walked away. So there are such recorded cases. But those are the minority. So based on the vast majority of cases, that person is definitely going to die very shortly. How much more so with regards to the fetus in the pregnancy, where most cases, it's just the opposite. They are alive and there is a live birth. Up there is the quote. Shuv Kosav, and then further he writes, this is all according to that commentary that we brought down, who explains the story in the section of Mishpatim. But there is a question. The imkain, what's the question? That if so, what about according to the opinion that maintains that if you're giving a warning which is not an absolute warning, it's a doubtful warning, it is considered good enough? There's such an opinion. So according to that opinion, then a Jew should be put to death for killing the unborn fetus, because there was a proper warning. They told him that what you're doing now might be murder. And even though it might be, it's good enough. And we never heard of such a thing. We never heard that there's any opinion that says that a Jew is put to death for abortion, for killing an unborn fetus. This is the gist of his holy words that we just quoted from the Shoyol Umeshiv. And now, says the author here of the S'dei Chemed. So we're at the beginning of the second paragraph on the right-hand column. Ukfia nire, apparently, loy zachar sar mashakosov harashpa b'chidusha of the Shabbos tav kuf lamed vav. B'dimar maschil hodomer Rabbi ketanoi. So seemingly, he doesn't remember what one of the early commentators, known as the Rashba, says on his commentary to tractate Shabbos. And then he gives you the exact reference where it is. What does he say there? Denefel loidami litreifa. A miscarriage on a fetus which may not survive is not like a treifa. It's not like a person who is destined to die from some terminal illness. And he brings the proof. What happens, forget about death, what happens on Shabbos? Now on the Sabbath, a Jew is not allowed to make a wound in a person, in oneself, in an animal. He can't cause someone to bleed. Can't make a wound. So what happens if someone on Shabbos wounds this person who's a treifa, the person who's surely not going to survive? Is that considered making a wound? Absolutely. The guy is a living person and he wounded him. How about this? We have an animal that's a treifa. Whether or not we know it before you slaughtered it, and one of the prohibited activities of the Sabbath is shchita, slaughtering. So what happens if on Shabbos a Jew shechts, he slaughters to death an animal? That animal was a treifa, which means the Jew can't eat the animal. So is that considered slaughtering it? Absolutely. So the definition of slaughtering is taking away the life of the animal. That's what he did. Doesn't matter that this animal is guaranteed that it was going to die within so many and so many days or hours. Right now it's alive, and he slaughtered the animal. He has transgressed Shabbos. He didn't kill a dead animal, which is an oxymoron. He didn't slaughter a dead animal, which would not be considered slaughtering. So Chaim mishum netilas neshama. He is liable for desecrating the Shabbos, for doing the melacha, the forbidden activity of removing the life. Ubenefel, but how about if someone does this to a fetus? It's as if the person is just cutting flesh, just cutting meat. It's as if he's already dead. And it's not like the treifa case, the person or the animal that is a treifa. So we see the difference. So we don't consider the fetus alive in this regard. Reason being, because the treifa, whether it's a person or an animal, is still living. Right now, he's alive. And therefore, according to this, we should say that a ben noyach also should be exempt from the death penalty for abortion, for killing an unborn fetus. The katul v'oimedu, because it's as if he's already dead. Like we said, he's not yet a human being in that regard. He's it's a cutting flesh, cutting meat, because he wasn't born yet. Unlike the person that's on their deathbed and is going to die within minutes. They're still alive. Or the animal that's a treifa, it's still alive. Whereas the unborn fetus is not yet a separate person. Ashenkin treifa, the kati chayu, because the treifa is alive. Rabbeinu Yoel ben Eliezer Ungar merech nitin nitpas b'shnas tofresh memtes b'simon zokein. Then he tells us another commentary. Shehevi mashakos of a Rambam, who brings down that which Maimonides writes, the benoich nerag im horagas a treifa, that a non-Jew is put to death if he killed a treifa, if he killed a person that is going to die. V'nistapek, and over there he's in doubt. Eichadin behorag neifel. He's not so sure. This sefer, the Riva, he says, what is the rule, what is the law, if a ben noyach killed a fetus, oy ben shmoina chai sheyatza la'olam, or an 8-month birth that came out alive. So let me just briefly fill you in on that. By Jewish law, again, I don't know, and frankly, it doesn't make a difference what modern biology tells us and what the doctors will tell you today. But by Jewish law, we have the following biological rule. A human pregnancy, generally speaking, is, as everyone knows, 9 months. But it may not be full term. 7 months is considered a 100% regular birth. If the baby is born after a 7th month pregnancy, that's fine. and if the baby is born even earlier, so it's premature, etc. 7 is good, 9 is regular. 8 is impossible for the child to live. Don't ask me why. An 8-month pregnancy can't be. And even if it was a live birth, the child won't make it. Okay? Just take it for what it is. The child will die within 30 days of the birth. So, what happens if a ben noyach, a non-Jew, kills an unborn fetus, or an 8-month birth, which means the child won't make it anyway? You can't compare those cases to the treifa, to the person that is terminally ill and that the person is still put to death for killing them. Like the Rashba wrote. And you also can't bring a proof from the fact that he says that one is liable for killing the unborn fetus. And let us be concerned, that maybe it's a miscarriage. Because perhaps over there, in the case of the fetus, most pregnancies, as we said, are healthy live births. And maybe by Bnei Noach we do go by the majority, which is the topic we're really how we got into this. So therefore, don't tell me that, well, treifa is this. Even killing an unborn fetus, we should go by the majority, which means the majority is that the chances are it will be a live birth. Which means that, again, the only reason why a ben noyach is liable for aborting a pregnancy is because we go by the majority. So we see that we do go by majority. The Shuv Kosav, and furthermore he wrote, Moitze Mokim Ledina Shel Rambam, that he finds room for the ruling of Maimonides, the Gamal Atreifa Mitzuva ben Noyach, that the ben Noyach is commanded that he's not allowed to kill a treifa. The Humishum de Soiver HaRambam, the reason is because the Rambam, Maimonides, holds the ben Noyach lo yazdin basaruba, that by ben Noyach the Rambam holds we don't go by the majority. The Dafkul Yisrael Nemar Achar Rabim Lahatois. This famous quote, which is written in the book of Exodus, again in the portion of Mishpatim, which in Jewish law appears all over. 3 words, very crucial. Achrei Rabim Lahatois. You should follow the majority. And in Jewish law, that plays a very important role. That's only for Jews. The rule of following the majority is only with regards to the Jewish people. As this commentary of the Jewish Code of Law, the Pri Megadim, brings down in his introduction to the section of the laws of mixtures, of different foods getting mixed together. And if so, therefore, a ben noyach is killed even for killing a treifa. Because if you're gonna say that you're gonna go by the majority, that you don't go by the majority, a ben noyach should never be put to death for murder, because there is a chance that the person that he killed was a treifa. There is that chance. We don't know for a fact that the person that he killed didn't have some terminal illness that nobody knew about, including himself, and that he was definitely going to die within 12 months, let's say. But since most people that are alive are not treifa, we don't assume so. So we do see that we're following the majority, even for Bnei Noyach. Otherwise, even though there's a prohibition against murder, but we should never be able to actually kill someone for murder because there's the chance that the person that they killed was a treifa. And even if you're going to actually check, and even if after the death, after the murder, you're going to make this internal check to see what the story of the lungs and everything is, you still don't know. Because if, let's say, he killed him with a knife, for all we know that exact spot that he stabbed him and killed him, that had a hole in it before the stab, and that's why he would have died anyway within a certain amount of a short period. So you never know for sure. And if so, we can prove from here that even by a miscarriage, he should also be put to death for killing him, because anytime he kills, it's always somewhat of a doubt if the person that he killed was really a live person. If not, otherwise, why is he obligated? Why is he put to death for killing the fetus? Maybe it was a miscarriage. This is the gist of what he says. That from his words we learn to make this difference to make the difference for ben noyach between killing a treifa, a person that we know was terminally ill, and killing a unborn fetus. And we learn from here as well that the Rambam says that for Bnei Noach we don't go by the majority. So, at this point, what we see is that this case made over here is that according to Maimonides, according to the Rambam, we don't go by the majority for Bnei Noach. And for a treifa, he is put to death, person who killed a treifa. And likewise, for an unborn fetus, he is put to death. And it's not because we're following the majority. It's because it's established that this is a live person. And the only reason, really, why a Jew is not put to death for abortion, for killing an unborn fetus, is the technicality that there can't be a proper warning. But it is murder. And the Jew is forbidden to abort as well. The only difference is the actual penalty by the court. Let's try to go on to the next piece before we run out of time. We are on the bottom of the right-hand column. Visham. And over there, meaning where the same source that we started today's class, B'Shoyel Meishiv Chamisha'a, in this book called Shoyel Meishiv, B'Siman Pei Vav, in a different chapter over there, Hiksha, he asks as follows, and that which we state in the Talmud and Tractate Chulin, page 129, the Eiver Minachai, Einoi Chashuv Oichel Rabbi Shimon. Eiver Minachai, which is forbidden for a Jew, and it's one of the 7 Noachide commandments. It's actually the one that was added to Noah, that it's forbidden to eat any part of an animal, of a living creature, that was detached from that animal before the animal was dead. Eiver Minachai, that prohibition. So he says, according to the Mishnaic sage, the Tana, Rabbi Shimon, it's not considered food. For you can't feed it to others, because no one's allowed to eat it. You see, non-kosher meat, it's still food. But Eiver Min HaChai, I can't give it to a non-Jew. V'hiksha, and he asks as follows. The shapin mikre oichel, it should be considered food. Why? Sharei ochel levatloi beroiv. Because he could nullify it by mixing it into a majority of things which are permissible, which are not Eiver Min HaChai. U'minatayra muter levatol isur. And biblically speaking, you are permitted to purposely nullify something which is forbidden. Rabbinically speaking, you can't. But biblically, you could. You have something which is forbidden. You're allowed to take it and mix it into something else, and now it'll become nullified, and it no longer exists, and the whole thing is good. You're allowed to do that. So if I could do that, I could take Eiver Min HaChai, and I could mix it into a bunch of other pieces of meat, where I won't be able to identify the Eiver Min HaChai, and then it's all good. So why is it not food? V'im kein, shuv mikrei oichel. So if so, it is in fact called food. Sheroi lachi lachirim, that you could feed it to others. T'bi shlomi masr b'hana. It's one thing if it would be forbidden to derive any benefit from it. As levato, the hareinene. Then indeed you wouldn't be allowed to mix it, to try to nullify it, because that's called deriving benefit. Uchedekasa b'chavas das simen tzadik tes. Linyan ner Chanukah. The chol shasur bana leishayich bitul. Kederi writes about the Chanukah candle, anything which you're not permitted to benefit from, you can't nullify. Because even if you nullify it, you are deriving pleasure from it. Just because it's nullified and it doesn't exist anymore as far as the prohibition of eating it, but you are deriving benefit from that which was forbidden. So there's a difference between whether it's only forbidden to eat or whether it's also forbidden to derive benefit from it. Eiver Min HaChai, unlike other prohibitions, is permissible to derive benefit from it. It's just, you can't eat it. It's just that it's forbidden even for the non-Jew to eat, because he also can't eat Eiver Min HaChai. Therefore, it should be permissible to mix it, to nullify it. So from this we have a clear proof to that which the Pri Megadim is in doubt in the Jewish code of law, in a certain section. He asks the following question, the Pri Megadim. Eiver Min HaChai, which is forbidden for the Jew and for the non-Jew. Well, what about for the non-Jew, for the Ben Noach? Can you nullify it in a majority of regular meat, which a Ben Noach is allowed to eat? That is exactly his question there. Do we say that you follow the majority for Bnei Noach, which before we said there's the opinion that says that verse is only for Jews? So the Pri Megadim is asking, says perhaps we do say that you follow the majority for non-Jews as well. And even though it seems that the concept of nullifying something in 60 times, the ratio of 60 against it, for Bnei Noach is also permitted. So in other words, if let's say a little piece of Eiver Min HaChai fell into a large mixture of meat that is kosher for the Ben Noach to eat, but we know there's one little piece over there that's Eiver Min HaChai. If you have 60 times edible meat against it, it should become nullified, just like for the Jew. Because the point of something becoming nullified in 60 times means it no longer exists. So for Jewish people, this comes up all the time in Jewish law. Like we're not allowed to mix, for example, milk and meat. That's most common because non-kosher meat we just stay away from, like what's it doing in your kitchen? But milk, dairy, and meat, they're both permissible, separate. We cannot eat them together if you're Jewish, and you can't cook them together if you're Jewish. Same fridge, because they're both cold. Can't put them together if they're hot. Okay? Got this big stew of meat, cooking. Somehow, a little drop of milk fell in, and it dissolved. Okay? That's an everyday question that rabbis are asked by Jews. Or, more practically, they took a dairy spoon and stirred the meat pot, the meat cooking, or they took out a piece. So now you have to know. So there's ways to. So what's the ratio of the spoon that was in there? If it's 60 times against it, it means it doesn't exist. It's not there. Okay. So for the non-Jew, he says the same thing. If a non-Jew can't eat Eiver Min HaChai, can't eat a limb of a live animal, and a little piece of that meat fell into a huge pot of regular meat that's not Eiver Min HaChai, and it got all cooked together. He says for the non-Jew, of course it's permissible, the whole thing, because it doesn't exist anymore. It's not there. V'gam tam ki'ikar lo shayach rak liYisrael. V'lo lebenoach. Okay, then we have another point, which goes into Jewish law, that the taste of something is considered like the thing itself. He says that only applies to Jewish people, not to Bnei Noach. We're not involved with the taste. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. But as far as it becoming nullified for the Bnei Noach, it's got to be nullified by the majority. There has to be more kosher than non-kosher. Than the Eiver Min HaChai. Uchdechasav doidi zikni hagoyin Yeshuas Yaakov al hanoida b'Yehuda. He says, as my uncle, my great uncle that is, wrote on the Noida b'Yehuda, linyan isur shabala olam b'taruvis, with regards to a prohibition which came into existence, came into the world through a mixture. And if so, again, for a ben noyach, to nullify it in the majority won't help. But after looking into it, we don't need to come on to this whole explanation. That is because the whole reason why we say that if something is forbidden, it becomes nullified in a majority against it. That means to say that the prohibited item, that food, now has been transformed. It's no longer prohibited. Or another way to look at it is that every individual piece that we take, we say, no, that's not the one that is, it's a matter of probability. That's not the one that's no good. So if you had one piece of no good and it fell into a whole mixture, and now you got 100 pieces, each piece individually, chances are that it's a good piece, because there's only one bad piece. So if I look at it collectively, I have to admit that 1% is no good. But when I take each piece out individually and I judge it, each piece on its own right is good. If so, I'll call upon him gufa Eiver Min HaChai ein roy lahachil acherim. So that means that the Eiver Min HaChai itself is not fit to feed others. For rak achar habitul nifka ha'isur. It's only that after it becomes nullified, because it got mixed into other stuff, then it's no longer considered Eiver Min HaChai. Oy she'eino isur, or it's no longer forbidden. Havel oise shenesar zel lahachil acherim. But the one that is forbidden, that is Eiver Min HaChai, you can't feed to others. Then there's another factor over here, that there's a difference between whether it's dry goods or whether it is liquid, whether it's water. Because when it comes to something dry, then you don't say bittul, because it doesn't really mix. It's just a bunch of separate pieces that are together. And biblically speaking, you're not allowed to purposely nullify it. Lo kashya ad kan l'shoyne ayin sham. B'divrei Maslov v'hinei b'shnas tov reish yud beis. Hinei b'tshuva zu. So in this responsa, kasav b'shem ha'Pri Megadim, he writes in the name of this commentator, shenistapik bazeh, that he's in doubt. V'lo shehechlit she'ein din bitul b'roi v'benoach, and he does not definitively decide that there is no ruling of Bitul, of nullifying it in the majority when it comes to Bnei Noach. He does not say that in a conclusive way. Uvetinyana chelik aleph siman pei vav seifti b'maskal v'inei b'mashkas v'Rambam mar ka'asik b'may do amar rava b'yavomis perek achadasar daf tzadik ches amad aleph loy tema mishum dishitufei zima heim v'chulu v'kosav tzarech biur ha'azlinu b'chol ha'teira basa ruba v'tzarech loy medim mikan rayo l'ma shekosfu b'nei b'yehuda tinyana v'prima godim siman samach beis d'ba'akum loy gilsa teira d'azlinu basa ruba Lefize, Yisrael dazlinu basaruba, havu achim min ha'av min ha'em v'chulu ayin sham. Hine b'tshuva zum yaches la primagodim shesoiver kein be'emes. All right, so he brings down from the Gemara, the Talmud in Yevamos, where if you don't know two different people, can they marry each other if they don't know their relationship or whatever? So do we have to say that maybe there is a chance that they are brother and sister? So he says, or that they're, so he says, no, why would you assume so? So he says that when it comes to non-Jews, the Torah does not clearly reveal to us that we go after the majority. By Jews we do. And at this point, he wants to suggest that according to the Pri Megadim, for non-Jews, we don't go by the majority. We don't view a mixture and say that it's nullified in the majority. But he's going to go on and bring a different way to look at it. But we really are out of time now, so we will continue hopefully next time on the left-hand column, Hanach, Hey Nun Line Gechaf, on page Aleph Taf Reish Tes, which would be opposite to 32:16, so that would be 32:17. That's for next time, and in the meantime, I'm wishing everybody the greatest success in studying and promoting and observing and influencing everyone else to keep the 7 Noachide commandments, the God-given laws, and making this world the perfect world with the complete revelation of our righteous Moshiach. Now, thank you.